Greetings. Today I want to talk about leadership, management, and the success of organizations or teams or even entire societies, entire populations. So I was thinking about the way organizations are led or managed, and I believe that decentralized decision making is very important for organizational success. And there were two influences that affected my view on this matter. The first is something called Auftragstaktik, which translates to mission tactics in English. And it's a German concept that originated from the Prussian military, which later became the German military when Germany was unified in 1871. And it contributed to the German or Prussian successes in the Second World War, in the First World War, in the Austro-Prussian War, and in the Franco-Prussian War. And I will talk about that and how it affected their military successes. And the other influence that affected me was an article titled "The Use of Knowledge in Society," written by the economist Friedrich von Hayek. And that article criticizes the central planning of the economy because information is dispersed throughout the population. There's no central authority, whether it's an individual or team, that can possibly know what's happening everywhere at the same time. And also, it just doesn't have the time to micromanage everything. So you have to empower people to make their own decisions. You have to trust that they know a lot more information when you put them together. An entire population knows a lot more than, let's say, just one individual usually, or one team. And that they will make use of that knowledge, and you have to incentivize them to do so. So those are the two influences that I will talk about in this video. Auftragstaktik is a command style that contributed to the Prussian victory over Austria in less than 6 weeks in the Austro-Prussian War. In the Franco-Prussian War, it contributed to the Prussian-led German victory over the French army in about a month, which led to the unification of Germany. In the First World War, it contributed to the strong performance of the German military against multiple foes, such as the British Empire, the French Republic, the Russian Empire, Belgium, the United States of America, etc. And in the Second World War, it contributed to the German Blitzkrieg or lightning war conquest of Poland in about 5 weeks, Denmark in 4 hours and 19 minutes, Norway in about 2 months, Luxembourg in a day, the Netherlands in about a week, Belgium in 18 days, France within 7 weeks, and Yugoslavia within 2 weeks. It also contributed to Germany's rapid advance against the Soviet Union during Operation Barbarossa, reaching the outskirts of Moscow within 5.5 months. Of course, other factors also played major roles in Germany's successful Blitzkrieg campaigns, such as the Schwerpunkt principle, but that would be a topic for another video. Auftragstaktik is essentially a decentralized command style that encourages leaders in all levels of the chain of command to take initiative, make decisions, and take action without having to wait for orders from superiors. And in a dynamic and changing environment like the battlefield, this is very important because the battlefield changes rapidly. You need to have officers who can respond quickly and to respond to the changing environment without having to wait for orders from higher ups, because these superior officers, these commanders, they have to manage a larger zone of battle. They have to manage a battlefield, entire battlefield, basically. And they just simply don't have the time to micromanage everything. And they simply cannot know what's happening everywhere at the same time. And likewise, for junior officers, it's very important for them to be able to make decisions and take action without having to wait for orders from superior officers, from their commanders, because if they wait for orders and the battlefield changes a lot and their unit would have to deal with new situations, but if they wait for orders, then they can't deal with it in a quick enough time. So that's why it's very important for them to be empowered to take initiative and to make decisions, so they don't have to wait for orders from their commanders, and they can actually act and take action to respond to this changing battlefield, to respond to the changing environment, such as exploiting enemy weaknesses when it comes up. And you can't wait for your commander to hear the news. You have to act quickly, because if you don't act, the enemy will fix your weakness and you can no longer exploit that weakness. And there are so many other examples of how it's very important for these junior officers to act quickly and to take action and make decisions without that delay of waiting for the orders from their commanders. And Auftragstaktik basically enables all leaders in the chain of command to really lead and to take initiative and take action. So instead of relying on only one commander, the overall commander or the commanding officer of the battlefield, you can depend on the junior officers. You have to delegate the decision making to these junior officers who are closer to the ground. They can have immediate information of what's happening in their sector of the battlefield, and they can respond quickly based on the changing environment. Whereas if you have to rely on that one commander, he has to manage a bigger zone of battle, he has to manage the entire battlefield, and he doesn't have that time to micromanage everything, and he simply cannot know what's happening everywhere at the same time. But the junior officers, they're focused on specific parts of the battlefield. They know what's happening immediately in their part of the battlefield, and they can respond quickly. So that's why Auftragstaktik is so effective. And also, if the overall commander gets taken out, the junior officers would be empowered to continue to fight, because they are empowered to be leaders, to take action, make decisions, and take the initiative against the enemy. Auftragstaktik in practice means delegating decision-making to junior officers and giving them missions or objectives to accomplish, rather than precise procedures on how to accomplish them. In a changing and dynamic environment like the battlefield, giving junior officers precise procedures and details on what to do can be very constraining, because the battlefield and the situation can change too much for those procedures or details to remain relevant. They can simply become outdated very quickly because the battlefield changes and the situation changes. That is why it's important for the commanders who use Auftragstaktik to tell junior officers what to do or what to accomplish, rather than how to accomplish it. And that is why Auftragstaktik, when translated into English, means mission tactics. Sometimes Auftragstaktik means ignoring some orders that are counterproductive to the overall mission. For example, in the Battle of France in 1940, the German commanders Erwin Rommel and Heinz Guderian ignored orders to halt their advance, and instead they continued their advance, because they realized that if they halted their advance, the French forces could retreat and regroup. And instead they took advantage of the situation where the French forces would not have the time to retreat and regroup, because they would be cut off by their advance. And that's why they continued to advance and cut off the French forces and prevented them from retreating and regrouping. And this was crucial to the German success in the Battle of France. And the order to halt might have been given to the commanders so that other units could catch up, but Erwin Rommel and Heinz Guderian realized the enemy weakness, and they had the immediate information on the ground because they were with their units, they were with their troops, and they knew what was happening on the ground. They weren't all the way somewhere else in headquarters, away from the front lines. They were near the front lines, or really at the front lines, and they knew what was happening. So they knew the immediate information and they acted upon it to achieve the overall mission. Auftragstaktik works best in high-trust organizations where commanders or leaders trust their subordinates to work for the best interests of the organization. And that empowers these subordinates, these junior leaders, these junior officers, to take action, to take initiative, even if it means ignoring some instructions that are counterproductive to the overall mission. And this can be very crucial, like the example illustrated by Heinz Guderian and Erwin Rommel in the Battle of France, because if you trust your junior officers to do what is best for the best interests of the organization, then they won't be so fearful of going against some instructions or some orders that may have become outdated because of the changing situation and simply become counterproductive to the overall mission. And they would act and take initiative to achieve the overall mission based on the changing circumstances, even if it means ignoring some instructions and ignoring some orders. The article, The Use of Knowledge in Society, written by the economist Friedrich von Hayek, also influenced my thinking on decentralized decision-making. In the article, von Hayek criticizes the centrally planned economy, which is a profoundly inefficient way of managing a dynamic and constantly changing system like an economy. No single individual or no single team of individuals holding central authority can possibly know what's happening everywhere at the same time, nor does it have the time to micromanage everything. Economic information such as needs and wants, individual preferences, or even just local information is dispersed throughout the population. And in order to take into account all the local information, all the local knowledge, all the things people know about their own needs and wants, the things people know about their own individual preferences, in order to take that into account, you can't have central planning. You have to allow individuals throughout the population to make their own economic decisions, to take their own economic actions. And that is why the price system of the free market is very important, because it enables individuals throughout the population to make these economic decisions, to take their own economic actions, and to have a free market where individuals throughout the economy, throughout the population, can act based on their own economic knowledge and to make their own decisions that affect them, that are economically relevant to them, instead of relying on a central authority that cannot know what's happening everywhere at the same time and simply does not have the time to micromanage everything, which would be super inefficient. If you look at examples throughout history and in the modern day, the countries that achieve the greatest economic success are the countries that have economies that are closer to the free market system rather than the centrally planned system. Countries that empower their population to take initiative, to take action, to make their own decisions, unleash the genius and creativity of their populations. And they achieve far more than the countries that try to micromanage everything, that try to exert too much control over their populations, which is too constraining for their people and prevents them from achieving as much as those countries that empower their people to act, to take initiative, to make their own decisions, the more decentralized countries. The British Empire, the largest empire to date, functioned very much on a free market system, and much of the British Empire was actually built by business enterprises rather than by the British government itself. The British East India Company colonized India. The Virginia Company colonized Virginia. The Massachusetts Bay Company colonized much of New England. The Hudson's Bay Company colonized much of Canada. The South Australian Company colonized South Australia. The New Zealand Company colonized New Zealand. The British South Africa Company colonized Rhodesia, etc. Of course, the British government was also involved in colonization efforts, but much of the work was delegated to these companies through the profit incentives of the market, allowing for a great degree of decentralized colonialism that benefited from the visions, the talents, and the ambition of many people. The results speak for themselves, as the British Empire colonized more territory than any other empire in history. The world is dynamic and ever-changing, just like the battlefield or the economy. No single individual, no matter how intelligent he is, can possibly know what's happening everywhere at the same time, nor does he have the time to micromanage everything. The delegation of decision-making, or the decentralization of decision-making, is thus essential. Only by empowering your people in your organization or in your population to make decisions, to take action, and to take initiative can you unleash the talents, the creativity, and the ambition of all the people in your organization, all the people in your population. And that way you can achieve far more than relying on just one single individual deciding everything. And that is why the decentralization of decision-making is so important. So thank you for watching. I hope you enjoyed the video. If you did, then please like the video, comment your thoughts, and subscribe to my channel. I'll see you in the next video.